Answering MCAT questions in under 60 seconds. After an action potential, which ion movement helps to repolarize the neuron membrane? So for this question, we just need to remember the phases of the action potential, which include depolarization and then repolarization, hyperpolarization, and return to the resting membrane potential. And remember that for repolarization, this involves the membrane potential going back to being negative as opposed to positive. So for that to happen, we need to either have something negative coming into the cell or something positive leaving the cell. And as it turns out, if we remember the mechanism, in this case, it's actually something positive leaving the cell, which is going to be potassium, K+. So B is the right answer. But let's review the action potential very quickly. We have to remember that the graph is going to look something like this, okay? We're going to have, first of all, this kind of threshold, okay, okay, and then we also have a resting membrane potential, which is in neurons is going to be negative 70 volts. And essentially what happens is basically through graded potential, slowly we have an increase to this threshold. And when we get to the threshold, we have activation of the sodium voltage gated channels, which rapidly depolarize the cell. So we have this very rapid increase in the voltage. Okay, so initially it's negative 70 and then it becomes like positive 30 or something. Okay, now at this point, the sodium voltage gated channels close, and then the potassium voltage gated channels open, and you get that repolarization phase as potassium leaves the cell. However, when it gets back to threshold, okay, when it gets back, not to the threshold, I apologize, to the resting membrane potential, right? At this point, the potassium voltage gated channels start to close again. However, they have a delay. They don't close right away. So instead, some extra potassium leaks out of the cell and you get this hyperpolarization. And eventually the potassium voltage gated channels close. And after that, the sodium potassium ATPase will reestablish the resting membrane potential. Okay, so it goes back to this. And so the idea here is you have the depolarization phase, the repolarization phase, and basically the hyperpolarization phase right here. So remember those and remember which ions are involved.